Welcome back to another episode. I'm here with a very special guest, Michael McNatt. I've been wanting to probably do this podcast with you for probably a few years. We've had one probably a couple years ago on mold illness itself and mycotoxin illness. But again, you're one of my go-to locally when I have a patient needing somebody to be an advocate in kind of the doctor for the home, right? And that's kind of where I think, a lot of times people come in and they're worried about mold illness. And we're worried about it because, again, before you go and really start treating the person, we want to make sure they're not still marinating in a home or an environment that is making them sick. And this is where you come in. So I'd love to kind of everybody listening to hear your story and how you got into this world of kind of environmental illness, mold, and mycotoxins. So.
Yeah. So, kind of how I got into the whole paradigm of sensitized individuals, and mold can be a very, very serious issue for a lot of people. That's just kind of a sleeper agent, if you will. It is really a very meandering path. So I joke and tell people I'm the adult poster child for ADHD and have been most of my life. In the military, I was a counterintelligence, counterespionage agent, did surveillances. I was a federal agent for 3 years. Got out of the military, didn't want to do law enforcement, worked for Microsoft for 5 years as a systems engineer. And as a product support engineer. Loved Microsoft, but again, I just had this unsettled spirit, like I'm meant to do something else on this planet. So I went from there to working in internet web hosting and became director of enterprise programs for a .com company. And then I left there and went to work for banks and got into sales and became a regional sales manager for some little banks. People may have had Capital One, Auto, and Household, these big banks. And so people see my career and they're like, Mike, Microsoft, you could have been a multimillionaire if you'd stayed. And .com, you could have been, and yeah, each one of these, I'm like, anybody would have been just head over heels thankful to have any one of these careers. And I am thankful I've had them. But they all culminated to me kind of having this calling. And so I resigned from the bank kind of at the top of my game there. I was on the President's and Chairman's Club team, and everybody was shocked that I was resigning. But I wanted to go out and do something on my own, and something that I felt would make a difference for people. So I was looking at starting a small company when I got into working with a restoration company to open up a location here, learned about mold. And then I started running, there were a couple of things that really bothered me about that industry. And I'll just be quite transparent and candid. One of them was when I first started learning about mold, the statement, and I still cringe when I say it, that mold is gold.
Gosh, yeah.
It's disgusting.
Yeah.
It's like saying, hey, sick people, and
preying on the sick.
It made me feel, just hearing people say it, and there were a lot of people in the industry saying it, but they were talking about the general public. They weren't even talking about the additional complexities and pains and sufferings that the sensitized population goes through. So then after they were espousing mold as gold, I realized that's a market opportunity for me, and I started just trouncing competition on price. I could run a good business and make a decent profit if I didn't see mold as gold, but I saw it as a good, stable, solid business that people need the service done, and you can make an honest living at it. But started running across what people would refer to as the crazies. These are people that they would say, they think mold is in them and making them, all of these crazy symptoms that they're saying everything's tied to mold. And then, here we are 20, 25 years later, and we look at the biotoxin symptom clusters, and there's just about every system of the body that can be impacted and dysregulated. And we're like, yeah, they were crazy. They were crazy because no one believed them. They were crazy because they had this toxin in their body that made it almost impossible to remember things, difficult to concentrate. And yet I was running into people who were nationally, if not internationally known, child psychologists, PhD level players that I'm like, these people aren't crazy by choice. There's something drastically and significantly impacting them. So I decided it became a calling for me that this is who I'm supposed to help. I'm supposed to be here for these people. And so I started my remediation company, ran it for 12 years, and then sold it 3 years ago, and now I do the investigation side. So professionally, I'm an indoor environmental professional, which means 95% of my clientele come from medical referrals, and I typically don't advertise. I'm interested in helping those that I feel are underserved.
Yep. Well, again, that's partially how we found you. You still had the company at the time, but it's just at that time you're kind of talking about stepping back, and I think your son too helps out in some way, shape, or form. But I think you're talking about like more doing the video, the content to help empower and be a better voice for people. Because I mean, even though you mentioned like 25 years ago, these patients were called the crazies, or these clients were called the crazies, like we'll still have people come in like, oh, you probably think I'm crazy. My other doctor, my primary, just looks at me. I'm like, they still have this kind of like dumbfounded look when they hear these people's symptoms and stories, and you know, their labs, which are very superficial, 2 pages, are like, oh no, everything's normal, and it's got to beware, like up in your head, like you're just. Which it's not. When you start hearing these symptoms, and there are these calming clusters of symptoms that there's just a bunch of little fires going on within the body everywhere. Detox is compromised, and you're just seeing this body get very, very efficient at having very efficient reactions to the environment. And it's like they get more and more sensitized the longer they go on. So more and more things set them off. And you know, brain to hormones to inflammation to like other neurological autonomic symptoms to heart rate, like there's so many symptoms that cluster in. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things that we can talk about today that will give people a lot more ammunition and power for them to be a better advocate for themselves. So talk to me, like most people don't really even kind of know about mold illness, but talk like how common is it? Like is it much more common than we think? Or mold issues out in the environment?
I think it's more common than a lot of people know are aware. I mean, there's different estimates with different studies you'll see, but every home has mold. There's no such thing as a mold-free home, and we don't really want there to be, believe it or not. Mold serves a very useful purpose in our natural ecology. Without it, we would be wading through grass and trees over our heads, and it's all going to be dead stuff. Mold has a lot of advantages. It's only when it grows to elevated levels and or species that are particularly harmful. Now, the problem with mold is it starts out slow. Like I said, it's almost like a sleeper agent. And mold doesn't necessarily hide. It's just the places it prefers to grow just happen to be hidden places. It wants a place with moisture, and that's one of the things that drives mold to hide. Because I tell people mold hides, but water runs. And if mold can find water that hasn't run, meaning we're going to see it on the floor, and if we see it, we're naturally going to clean it up. Mold tends to stay where water is a problem that hasn't become an apparent problem. So the number one place, for example, in the South Central U.S. that I find a problem with mold is going to be crawl spaces. Number one, people don't go down there. If they do, I always have some other questions for them.
How do you feel when you get that?
In their air conditioner systems. AC systems is number 2, and number 3 is in sinks, in cabinets underneath sinks. It's because the slow drip happens in the back. You've got all your cleaning agents in that cabinet. You open it up and you don't see that drop may only happen, especially if it's a gravity side leak. It's only going to drip when gravity pulls a drop through, which may be once an hour. And that's only when the sink is being used. So there's been times I've found mold that it's obviously been there for potentially years, and like, you know, we've never emptied that cabinet out. We just put stuff back there and grab it, and the mold's been there the whole time. So I think a lot of people their illness gets misattributed or misdiagnosed, that, you know, oh, it's just allergies, or it's just this, or it's just that, or you're just getting older. And sometimes they never even seek medical help because it's just such a broad symptom set, and it can happen anywhere from very mild across a wide variety of symptoms to very severe and very specific symptoms, and symptoms that don't seem to make any sense, that people don't run across very frequently. Neuropathy and tingling sensations and things that would make them think, oh, I'm losing my mind.
Well, and then too, like, oh, I'm getting older, I'm just getting more forgetful. It's like, now again, it's like, I don't like accepting like age is the reason we have things decline, because if you look around amongst your peers, there's always the exception to the rule. Like, that person looks 10 years younger than you, or that person looks 10 years older than you. You know, why is their environment being more kind or less kind to them in the aging process? That's always try to get our patients to think like that, is just how are you aging relative to your kind of peer group? Are you above the curve, below the curve? Are you in the middle of the curve? And again, it's one of those things like, oh, I'm just getting older. Memory's an issue. Like, oh, maybe I have neuropathy. Like, that's why. It's like, again, but you always want to figure out the why.
Well, you had a question. I'd love to get some of your insight on this. Is something I try to read on a lot, and that is mold's becoming more prevalent as a problem. And some say, well, it's because of education and awareness. Part of it, I think, is that it's coming on a little bit more mainstream since the early 2000s. It hit the news, and people start saying, "Oh, okay, mold." But that's not the whole puzzle. The environment is definitely changing and becoming more toxic. And our indoor environments, and not only that, but mentally, we're being faced with pressures that. I mean, I was young during the day where the first Pong game came out, and that blew my mind. And now kids are talking, their phone does anything and everything, including putting us in front of these great people.
You could literally record our voice and have AI generate us, and have generative AI, and not just have a still of us, and it speaks for us, which is crazy. So what are some of the contributors that you focus on as far as why is it getting worse and why is it becoming more of a focus? I think as a general population, at least within this country, and this would be curious to hear your take in terms of other countries if it's also, but from a westernized standpoint, like, we are just getting much more sick as a country now. I think as people start to have other health issues or other stressors, other things start to buckle. So again, when you start looking at detox, your baseline defense systems, like when we're stressed out, all of our mucosal membranes, like so our sinus, lips to ass, are not as resilient. So whether it's a bacterial, whether it's an infection, just easier for them to breach the gates of like, oh, hey, look, this person's compromised, right? When we're stressed out, we have less hydrochloric acid or stomach secretion, mucosal secretions, which that also is a protective thing. That helps us thin out the herd of new things coming in as well as things that are inside us already. So I think it creates opportunity. So it allows allows the Trojan horse to come in. We also know like stress, and again, we mentioned different toxins. They crush our liver pathways. So I think if we do have toxins and things that we're trying to metabolize, if our liver and our pathways get overwhelmed, now it's just, it's a roadblock. Things start to bioaccumulate. And it's again, like, where can I throw this? Like, let's throw this down in this gliotoxin in some nerve tissue, right? So it's just like, where can we put it where it's just not in the hallway and put it off in an overflow closet, right? And that's our tissue. So I think that to me is where I see more and more of these metabolic issues, more and more stress issues. And again, our bodies are resilient, but once things start to tip the scale, it's very easy for like, oh yeah, you have a blood sugar issue, oh, you're anemic. That's the part to me where I see more in those type of things. Like, I see women generally more impacted. And again, I see more estrogen type dominance issues. I see more environmental tolerance issues, and that's like, when you start to have those clusters of things, like, oh, and my doctor, they just told me it's normal to be anemic because I was pregnant or because I'm a girl and I have a cycle. It's like, it's never normal. It might be more prevalent. Right? But I'm like, well, good luck for phase 1 detox. Like, your cytochrome systems are all iron dependent pathways. Like, that's not going to help you. So I think that is where I look at, like, I feel like just as a general approach to it, I think, yes, there's more awareness, but I also think people are more metabolically compromised. We're exposed to 80,000 different chemicals, and 25% have been tested, and a lot of them, as they're tested, like, they're still not good for us. And yet we're still being exposed to them at a higher and higher level. So I think there's a lot of that aspect into it. Well, I think a lot of it is too how we choose to live as a society. We're building boxes to keep Mother Nature out. And then we try to let things, we try to bring things into the box that are convenient parts of nature, like indoor plumbing and lighting and whatnot. But we can't replicate everything Mother Nature does to control the microbial growth. And she does a really good job of that outdoors, otherwise the planet would be covered in mold. So there's ozone and hydroxyls and radical oxidative molecules being created by the sunlight that keeps all that, and then we block the sunlight out. Well, when you think about, I've heard it said that mold is a first world country problem. It's a developed nation problem. It's not a third world country problem. And I used to spend quite a bit of time in the Yucatan, and would stay at a hut that's thatched in grass, and I could look up and just see the mold. And I would, of course, ask to be moved to another room because I'm Western and I'm so, but
It's that they're living in open breeze. The breeze comes through, and even being right under that mold in a thatched hut is probably less risk to them than a much smaller amount of mold in our tightly sealed foam. We got foam insulation now. Our houses don't breathe. And in Mexico, when somebody says, "Hey, I'll meet you at lunch," you had to really pin them down. Are you talking about today, tomorrow, or next week? Because their lifestyle is just like, oh, when we get to it. It's a much more relaxed. There's not as much stress put on. They don't have the same success paradigm, climb to the top of the ladder that we do. Plus, they walk a lot. So
lymphatics.
different societies. When you get more fresh air, when you're more active, when you're outdoors more, when your house is more open, when you get more Mother Nature in, it tends to be healthier. So I think it's just a culmination of all these things. That
we talk about this often. It's like, our temperatures are set within such a tight range. Like, again, if we go back a century ago, our ancestors were sitting around fire, like trying to stay warm in the winters. Like, I'm from Canada originally, so again, you think about like your body had to be forced to constantly have this adaptation. When we show up, we have artificial light from the LEDs, and it's always like our brain is not, again, you're not challenging your system, your autonomics, right? Your heart rate, we're not as active. And again, it's like, why do people exercise? Like, do things that increase and challenge the system. That's why we exercise. So we're not moving the same, so we're not challenging that system. When we're stagnant and stressed out, lymphatic function goes down. Like, our lymphatic vessels don't have smooth muscle, so we don't have kind of the benefit of like, oh, it's just going to move on its own. So I think all these things just culminate. Plus, again, we're creating this, like, it has to be such a perfectly sealed environment too. That's another good way of looking at it. But I think all those things create this recipe of like, we get less efficient at adapting, right? So yeah, kind of. One of my questions was, why is mold such an invisible threat? Because again, a lot of people are like, well, I don't see mold. Like, but I'm like, hey, but it's. So I talked to them about like what a mycotoxin is and what's the part of mold that makes you sick. Why do you think people like underestimate the potential of mold?
Well, I think a lot of people see mold as being the colony. And they're like, there's the mold. It's over there, and that's the mold. That is the colony, but that colony is producing a lot of things, and it's the things that it's producing that are making us sick. So, you mentioned mycotoxins. Toxigenically, mycotoxins are what produce the toxigenic effects. Allergenically, it's a component of the cell structure of mold, the beta-glucans.
So even on that, right, like the beta-glucans, like if somebody's having this exposure to beta-glucans, what does that do to their allergy responses?
Oh, it can trigger mast cell activation and cytokine. These are all clinical things, which I try to kind of stay on my side of the road, but it fascinates me so much. And it does, we're always having that discussion in the profession of indoor environmental professionals versus medical. And there's some talk about potentially having maybe a nursing type degree for indoor environmental professionals that if they're going to work with clinical people, they have to go through. So when they talk about these things, we have reason to believe they're doing it from some stable base of knowledge. But because it does ease my client patients' minds to know that, hey, I'm not a doctor, but I know what you're suffering from. I don't know what you're suffering from, but I feel you're suffering. I can empathize on a level that comes not just from feeling pain when someone feels pain, but knowing a little bit of the details and the facts behind why that is painful or why that causes them to suffer. But in a lot of cases, the allergenic reactions can be as severe as some of the toxigenic reactions, depending on the mycotoxin, the mold, and the dosage. It can make people miserable. Once those cytokines flood and the mast cell activation happens, that systemic inflammation triggers that extreme fatigue and cognitive dysfunction and just all types of, feeling like you have arthritis when you're 20, like severe arthritis. I had a client patient that was a marathon runner and 26 years old. Now, when I met him, I say, "Oh, you run marathons?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "I says, how many have you run?" He says, "I think 14 or 15. And I told him, "I think I'm on my 27th." And he looked at me, he says, "You're a runner?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, just not all at once. I count every forward step for progress to make me, it's all moving in one direction. I just count it." When I get to 26 miles of distance, I just ran another marathon. But he had to quit running because it impacted him so severely. And in fact, he could not walk unassisted until we found the mold. And a lot of people get confused about mycotoxins and volatile organic compounds because they call me up and say, Mike, I'm going to fog. Will this kill the mycotoxins? I'm like, you can't kill what's not living. A mycotoxin is not alive. It's a chemical.
Right. And what's the purpose of the mycotoxin?
It's a biochemical warfare agent. It is to defend that colony of mold that produced it.
Right. And primarily against other colonies. Yeah. And that's.
They're extremely complex molecules. They are so expensive to make. And that's why even molds people call me and say, I've got black mold, therefore I've got toxins. And I'm like, not necessarily. That mold does not want to produce those toxins unless it has to, because they're extremely resource rich to make.
So I was going to ask this question a bit later, but I think this is a really good question while we're on the whole topic of like, it's expensive for even the mold colony to make those toxins.
Sure, yep.
So this kind of goes into like, I have a friend of ours, they're like, oh, hey, like, been telling them like, you should look for mold. I think you have a mold issue. Keep an eye on their lab, like, looks like you got some mold issue. And so I ran into them this weekend. They're like, oh, hey, we have mold in our closets. I'm like, okay. And I hope they're taking it seriously. I'm like, don't be in the home, especially when they start to remediate and deal with it. And again, I felt like there was like, okay. But I'm like, because again, what happens when you stress the mold colony? Like to me, that from my understanding, that's when they actually are encouraged to produce the mycotoxin.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, popular guy.
Oh, come on. There we go. Y'all post, right? Y'all can take that out post?
Yeah, I'll figure it out. But for me, when it comes to like the mycotoxin side of it, right? Like I think that's the part. It's like, and it's also when you go to kill it, if you're worried about colonization. So what do you recommend for people? Like, again, I'm like, go get a hotel, get out of there. Like, you don't want to be around when that stuff is basically being threatened. Because that's going to potentially make you worse before you get better.
So we'll talk about some of real quick if we can. That's like an amazing passion of mine. This is my this is my life passion. This is why I believe the universe has put me here. There is now an organization called healthyhome.help.
Awesome.
It's a 501c3 nonprofit, federally recognized, state recognized, true nonprofit. And the reason why I bring that up is because what you do, if you think you have mold and how seriously you take it, depends on how much money you have. And so the whole slogan behind healthyhome.help is, we don't believe indoor environmental health should be a question of personal wealth. And awesome. I am documenting, currently there are 36 courses up there on what to do if you find mold that specifically addresses people who are economically disadvantaged. So if you are, I tell people I don't personally like to brag about my wealth, but I do live in a 2-bedroom apartment and I only need 1 bedroom. So, and I'm like, I look at the 28th, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna make rent again on time, living large. But seriously, a ton of my resources goes to this passion project. It has, in medicine, you're taught that, if somebody's injured or somebody presents with, there's things you do before you go seek like true treatment plan. You do triage, you stabilize them. I'm an Army veteran and I was taught combat triage. You stabilize. So if a person has the resources, by all means, go get out of the area. But what do you do for the, for the family on disability or the person's been laid off and they're like, I can't go get a bed and breakfast. So there's a course up there called Emergency Triage for Environmental Health.
Awesome.
If you find mold in your house, there are 3 steps you take. Step 1 is isolate. If you know where the mold is, put on a mask, isolate yourself, suit up with some PPE to protect yourself, and then cover that mold in plastic and tape, non-permeable barriers as best you can, because if you can trap it until it can be taken care of, if it can't get to you, it's not going to hurt you until it can get to you. Step 2 is separate. If it's in a bedroom, close that vent, close that door, tell people don't go in that bedroom.
So tape the vent off.
Go stay in a guest bedroom, go sleep in a guest bedroom. And in fact, I was just telling a family that has a lot of personal resources today. They said there's some mold in our bedroom. I'm like, move out of your bedroom. I said, you don't have to go stay in a bed and breakfast, but go stay in a guest room. Put some distance between you. And then third is filtrate. Now, that's the one got you. People go, oh, well, that's expensive. You start talking about some of the commercially available air scrubbers or air purifiers. They can run $800 to $1,200. On my website, there's instructions on how to build what's called a Corsi Rosenthal box.
And that's on healthyhome.help?
It's on healthyhome.help. You basically take 4 air conditioning filters that are much higher grade than you can put in your filtration unit, in your air conditioning unit. It'll burn it up. You tape them together on the edges to form a cube, put a box fan on top, tape a round piece of cardboard on the bottom, plug it in, turn it on. You can build them for about $100 a piece. They'll filter as much air as these expensive units, not quite to the level of efficiency, but very closely. They'll filter out 86% of particles down to 0.3 microns, which is a really great. It's much better than your AC can filter.
Yeah.
You build a couple of those, and then I've been telling people or helping them. Like they were like, "Hey, I was staying in my home because I had to. I was feeling sick. Everybody's telling me you've got to get out. You've got to get out. I can't get out." I said, "Well, follow the emergency triage procedures." They spend $200 or $300, and they call me 3 days later saying, "I finally am feeling better." And I said, "Okay, it's just a Band-Aid. All you've done is apply the tourniquet, but you've stabilized your environment so that now you can have the proper treatment procedures taken."
Yeah, but that could be huge, because sometimes people may not be able to get to the actual proper treatment for, depending on finances, depending on kind of where they are in the process.
It can be weeks or even months for some people.
100%.
And I don't know why I missed that for so long. I thought, why, when people were calling me saying, "I have mold in my house," I was talking to them about, "Okay, let's get you on the schedule, let's get testing done." And then they're like, "Oh, wait, I've got some financial considerations. I'm going to have to call you back." We have triage processes in so many different areas. I'm like, this is a perfect area just to say there's some simple rudimentary steps we can take to buy us just a little bit of time, or at least make the time that we're going to have to wait a little bit healthier for us to be in that environment.
Oh, that's excellent. So if somebody's listening to this, what would you tell them if they're going to buy a home, or they just want to walk through their home and like, should I maybe have some considerations about, is there mold? Like, are there signs that they can go through and look for that are out of the ordinary, that may not be directly to them a mold sign, but to you like, oh, that's something that has to be evaluated for mold?
So I want to start off this answer by saying, first of all, I'm an animal lover. I love animals, but I am going to beat this dead horse. On healthyhome.help. On healthyhome.help, there's a course.
Go to it.
There's a course on what to look for when you're finding a home, because it's broken out. The whole healthyhome.help is broken down into steps based on what I call the roadmap to recovery. There are 2 branches in the roadmap. One of them belongs to me, and one of them belongs to you as a clinician. My branch is to get the person out of the contamination, get you out of it. The second branch is to get it out of you. Once you've been exposed, it's in there. You need to get it out, and it's not going to come out easily on its own. So the get you out of it is all about, the triage steps first, then identifying where the mold is, doing good assessment, remediation, get rid of it, cleaning personal property and the contents. But one of those steps, in fact, it's right after emergency triage. There's a course called Leave or Stay. And it's the questions you need to ask yourself about your circumstance, your home, your health and conditions, and then your finances, and you need to determine, am I going to stay here or am I going to leave? The best answer from a medical perspective is to leave. There's zero risk with going somewhere else, as long as you're not going from frying pan to fire. But if you're going to stay, it has things to do, like the emergency triage steps. If you're going to leave, it talks about things to look for when you're leaving, and it's not just where you're going that you have to be careful of, it's what you're bringing with you. Because all of those things have been in a moldy environment, so there's courseware on how to clean and process all of that, so when you take it with you, you're not leaving the burning building with a sofa that's on fire. Take it with you into your new place.
Trying to stop the baggage following you.
Absolutely. So that there are things you can do. I mean, you want to, but most importantly is probably know the history of the home. Flip homes and homes where the owners were not the occupants are especially at risk. So rental properties that people are now deciding to sell, or flip homes, foreclosures, those types of homes are typically high risk. Knowing the age of the home, because the older home is, the more likelihood it may have a water damage. I tell people, if you absolutely cannot avoid it, then it is what it is. And in certain parts of the country, it's much more difficult. But don't buy a house with anything below grade. No crawl spaces, no basements. Now, you tell somebody from New England no basement, they're like, what, I'm never gonna live in a house again. So we deal with what we have to deal with. But especially down in South Central US where it's hot and humid, don't get a house with a crawl space.
In terms of, so yes, it's more common to see mold in the old home. But again, I think we've had patients come in like, with maybe delay them from getting the proper treatment, the proper recognition. Like, we have a 12,000 square foot brand new home, like multi-million-dollar home. It can't have mold in it. It's like, it's not. I mean, I think that's one of these misconceptions. Like, just because it's a new home doesn't mean it's not potentially something that's going to have mold.
Mold doesn't know how big the house is.
Or how
because it's microscopic. It's just building. It's got its little colony, and this world is, in a little spot. So it doesn't know it's in a great big home. I think a lot of times we associate mold with smaller homes because having that excess wealth, allows you to care for the home, and you've got people that help care for it. Yes, the better a house is maintained, the lower probability you have of having mold. But mold doesn't care the size, the cleanliness, or any of that. If it finds moisture in food, it will grow and colonize and reproduce.
When that was this patient, I'm like, well, we send them off and then we had them do an ERMI, and it came back like off the charts, and like, man, led to a whole other issue with the builder because there was some negligence, but all around the windows when they found was leaking in this massive brand new home. Migraines on the wife, more dementia-like symptoms on the husband, and again, only once they moved into this brand new home.
I have found some of the biggest mold problems in larger, more affluent homes, because a lot of times they'll deviate from, once you think about the tract homes that one home looks like another. Well, at least that same home has been built the same way over and over. So if there was a problem with number 1, by the time they get to number 20, hopefully they will have figured it out. But these custom homes, sometimes the homeowner's wanting something that's a little counter industry practices. They're like, oh, I want this to go off this way and this to do this and loop around. And the builder does their best to accommodate an affluent client when really it's probably not in the best interest of either the client or the builder. Sometimes a hard no is a message you've really got to try to sell, especially, in being a doctor, you've got to tell people bad news sometimes.
Well, and being somebody so before, when I was in undergrad, I was framing homes, and we built custom homes, and it's one of those things where I could understand the aspect of, especially, and then you talk to patients here, they're like, oh, I want these special windows. If the builders never worked with those windows, they're going and they're taking a crash course, like, okay, how do I install the window? Because putting a window in is pretty straightforward, but it's about the sealing it, like the underlay, the overlay, all these little things that are really about creating a moisture wicking process, like moving water away versus letting it come in. And again, when you throw new materials or put a request, I could see that creating the opportunity, especially if the builder's like, oh yeah, I'll figure it out, right? Because they're not gonna like, no, I'm gonna turn your money away, like, and basically potentially exclude myself from this job if they say no.
Well, one of the best examples I have is a client I did a job for, because if you can imagine, they had giant, these huge wooden rafters from a 14th century Lithuanian monastery that they had shipped over. And so they're just ancient. And who knows what they've been through in their life as a wooden, but they had them all throughout their living room and kitchen as decorative beams, and they were gorgeous. But they had more mold than
had centuries.
Centuries of mold buildup.
Are there any misconceptions for like somebody looking for mold in terms about the mediation process?
Oh, there's a lot of bad information out there.
So what would be some red flags if somebody's looking for somebody to come in and give them a proper evaluation of their environment, their home? What are some red flags that you just like call BS on, or like, hey, heads up for these?
Yep. So there's red flags on both the assessment side, the testing, and as well as the remediation side. Any assessor that is trying to sell a product or a service, they're like, hey, not only can we assess this and tell you where the mold is, but we can take care of it. That could be a red flag because there's a profit motive. There's a conflict of interest. Anybody that says anything about killing mold, be just raise the flag right there. In fact, you might not even want to raise that flag. You may just want to show them to the exit. And so many people here, well, you can spray mold with bleach, or there's this magic fog. You can fog it, and you don't have to remove it. And it sounds enticing because it'll save all that demo, all of the remodeling costs. But I always use this analogy that resonates really well with people. Let's say you woke up every morning and your eyes are swollen shut and you're stuffy, and you finally go to your doctor. Your doctor says, you know what? I don't want to take a chance here. I'm going to send you to an allergist because I think you're having an allergic reaction. Sounds feasible for a mold story, right? But this is not a mold story. Doctor calls you the next day and says, the allergist calls you and says, I've got good news. Your test results have come back. You're highly allergic to cats. Do you have any cats? You're like, well, yeah, I've got 2 cats. And the allergist says, well, you're going to need to do something with about those cats. And you say, got it, doc. I hope it does not cross your mind to kill the cats. It shouldn't.
Right.
You're not allergic to the life of the cat. If this is YouTube, I better not say that word. Unalive the cats. Is what
It'll be on YouTube. But
what's that?
It'll be on YouTube. Our listeners will understand. This is metaphor.
Metaphorically, yeah. But I think YouTube has they look for that word and they'll delist videos that say that for risk. But you don't want to. You're not allergic to the kitty spirit. Okay,
No.
so you have got what that allergist means is you relocate the cat, find it a new home, and that's why branch 1 of the roadmap to recovery and with Healthy Home Help is get you the impacted individual out of the contaminated environment. And that means either find it and relocate it to someplace that'll be happy, which for mold, the happiest place on earth has got to be is a city dump. Yep. It's got all kinds of food and it can just live happily. And in fact, we like mold in a city dump because it helps break down material. Or you need to relocate yourself away from it, either permanently or temporarily. If you're renting, a lot of times people just want out of the lease. I'm out, and that's a good plan.
That was a recent patient. I'm like, look, you don't own this. And you may bring this information back to your landlord, and you're going to be probably more motivated to find a solution than they are, because it's going to be cost them money, not you. Like your rent's going to probably stay the same. Yeah. So I'm like, this is one of those things where your best solution, if you can, mobilize. Just find a new spot. Yeah. They're not, and because again, you're not choosing the person that's going to solve this problem too. So you're worried about the quality of the job, and then you're asking to pay for it. And if at the end of it, the quality's bad, you're still sitting here in the same situation. So I'm like, hey, this is your chance to go find a good place. Yeah. So, that's an important decision though, as far as whether you're going to leave or stay. And another red flag though I want to bring up is anyone who is not in the profession of finding mold or advising on mold. You will hear, and think about the motives of the individual that's giving you the information. Property management companies are notorious for saying things like, that's just mildew. Mildew and mold are the exact same thing. There's no special. Now, and in actuality, there is something called powdery mildew, which is in orchards. Okay. But unless you're living in an orchard, you can't call anything. You're not around mildew. You're around mold. It's just small amounts that we're seeing. If they see it on the grills, especially HVAC, heating and air conditioning, when people say, "Oh, it's just a little bit of mildew on the grill or a little bit of mold on the grill," that's just what you can see. That whole system is handling moist air, and sometimes they're right. Sometimes we just take off the grill and we don't find anything else. But it takes a licensed HVAC person to open that unit up and really know what they're looking for. Any other additional red flags, like where it's just screaming, oh, this person's just not qualified to handle the job?
I think, we can get into an area, if you want to talk mold dogs just a little bit.
Yeah, I have a question on there about mold
Okay,
dogs.
Great. Everybody, there's two camps.
Because I've heard people like, oh yeah, this again, and I haven't seen it. My business partner was talking, like how he had a patient come and say like, yeah, supposedly like this patient was told their house didn't have mold because they brought this, famous like social like media dog that sniffs out mold, and their house was told like there's no mold because this dog didn't find any. Yeah.
Well, there's a couple of problems with the mold dog concept, but I tell you, it's as far as a tool, I'm a big fan. It's a great tool. It's one of the tools I use quite frequently, but it has its use case. It has its application. Some people are using it out of its application zone, and they won't get good results. But the number one problem with mold dogs is you're hiring a team, you're hiring a handler, and you're hiring a dog. Now, it is a fact that the dog has an olfactory sense that's 30 to 100,000 times more acute than ours. That's a huge leap in olfactory sense. Can the dog smell mold? Absolutely. It can smell just about every component of everything.
Smell our next thought.
And so you've got a handler though. Now the dog is like a toddler that has a superpower. The dog wants the same thing the toddler wants. It wants love and affection, it wants acceptance, it wants treats, it wants to be told he's a good boy. So the dog is going to do what it needs to do to get those things, and if it learns to alert on every mold smell it smells, if they were inspecting this office, you'd have nothing but patches of blue tape everywhere. Because the dog is, do I smell mold here? Yeah, I do. I'm not being dishonest.
Nope.
Is it a molecule or is it a pile?
Yeah.
The dog can be taught to differentiate quantities, and that's called calibration. Handlers that don't know how to handle dogs is your biggest risk.
Okay.
And I'll tell you what bothers me in the industry is when you find somebody who's been sick from mold and they recover and they feel a calling in their heart to help other people who've been sick, and they think the best way to do this is going to be to get a dog.
Yeah.
I think that does a disservice because that is not a professional dog handler. And here's how I equate that. If you ever have a pain in your chest and you're like, oh, that's a start, oh boy, I'm getting on up there, you know, that's this baby, I need to get to the hospital. If you go to the hospital and a gentleman comes in and introduces himself and says, I'm going to be your cardiothoracic surgeon, and be just to reassure you that I'm the right guy, I want to let you know I'm a cardiac thoracic surgeon based on the fact that I've had 3 heart attacks myself, so I know what you're going through.
Yeah. Not because of actual treatment.
Yeah. If you have a heart attack and you want to help other people, don't go buy a scalpel.
No.
It's a bad thing. So I try to get people to shy away when they say, I'm going to buy a dog because I've had mold experience. Well, then you should consider becoming a mold assessor. Learn how to find mold and then go into that, or become a coach to help people change lifestyle to learn to recover from mold. Do something other than, if you're a dog handler, you need to know dogs better than anything. And so there's a company here that's out there. You want to look for a company that hires professional dog handlers, either ex-military or ex-law enforcement or X years in training dogs. And because the dog's going to do what the dog does. It's a little superhero.
So if you train it properly to have like the calibration
you calibrate
component,
it. And they have to recognize it in the field. They'll watch the dog and they'll see the dog do something. They're like, I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
And they'll make the dog go around 2 or 3 times, and then finally the dog will be like, okay, I just wanted extra treat. And but it does take guidance, and you want the guide to be.
Are there any vetted or kind of places that you would recommend? Like
There's a company that actually they full disclosure, they actually are asking to get more involved with Healthy Home Help because they have a passion for helping people. There's a company called Mold Dog Knows.
Okay.
And they've got handlers. They're actually building a network of professional handlers to try to combat the growing number of single handler operator dog teams that are out there where the operator was just somebody who had mold sickness.
That's really interesting. I mean, again, I think dogs and just animals in general, but like dogs have more senses that they're aware of our environment than we even know, right? They just
they can smell cancer.
They can smell cancer. They can sense danger and like bad people. Like they have these intuitions that unfortunately we don't necessarily have the connection to.
Now with that in mind, I do tell people the second big flaw with the dogs is not with the dogs at all. It's with the people that are hiring them and their expectations and how their expectations are being set. Right. The dog is not a superhero. The dog is smelling mold.
Yep.
If you have really, really old mold that dried out and has mummified and has off-gassed, the dog may not smell it.
Yep.
New mold, the dog's going to smell. Old mold, the dog may not. So the first error is on what we call a false negative.
Okay.
Like a dog goes through an area, says there's no mold here, but there is. It's just super old.
Okay, so it's already off gas, and what it would detect has been kind of able to dry up and drift away.
Yep. And then on the other end, false positives. Dogs are so sensitive, their calibration hits a point to where it's maybe yes, maybe no for us.
Yep.
But for the dog, it's a definite yes. And what I mean by that is a dog will alert somewhere, we'll open it up, and we'll never find what the dog was smelling.
Interesting.
There's nothing visible, there's no signs of water damage. However, We clean it, bring the dog back through, and the dog says, okay, it's gone. So whatever it was, mold can grow at a mycelial level, at a microscopic level, before it's colonized. You know, but people see a spot of mold, they go, oh, that's the mold organism. No, that's tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands. It's a forest. And if you're just growing one little mold organism there, one mold structure, you'll never see it until it repopulates a lot.
What are there any? What's the most accurate way, aside from the pup or the dog, but in terms of testing, right? Like, is there a go-to test that you recommend for listeners to either have the right person order or order themselves?
There is an order of operation of steps people should take, and it depends on what base of knowledge they're starting with or what their starting circumstances are. So if you're calling me right now, you're saying, Mike, I think there's mold in my house. I would ask you, do you think or do you know? And if you said, I know, I would ask why. Why do you know there's mold? To get a little bit of the facts and kind of help come to the conclusion that, yeah, there's mold in that house. If you are on the fence, you're like, I haven't been feeling good, but I have no idea if it's my house. I have no idea if it's mold. I'm going to tell you more than likely to not hire me, which it surprises people all the time. They call me and say, Mike, I want to hire you. I want to schedule you. I'm like, nope, it's not the right time. I get more business from telling people no than I do yes, because they remember me, they refer me.
They just want somebody to be honest. Right?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Being honest sometimes, like, because they'll remember you and come back to you when the time's right.
And so I tell them, go to a lab. There's a lab called Liz Biotech, LISBIOTEC. You can order what's called an ERMI test. Now, people will read online, there's an EPA letter out, ERMI should not be used for environmental investigations and whatnot. I don't want to get too technical, but I'll tell you, nobody understands that ERMI is not a test. ERMI is an analytical framework. It's an analytical and evaluative framework based on logarithms. That's why ERMI is no good for environmental testing. The underlying test is called qPCR. And it is extremely accurate. It's DNA level testing. It's about as accurate as you can get on any type of test. So when I'm telling you to buy an ERMI, what I'm telling you is to buy the ERMI, use that to get qPCR data, which is a column of data they give you based on 26 species of mold. Send that to me and let me look at those 26 species. Technically, I'm not using ERMI. I'm using qPCR. I also like the Hertzsprung score, which they'll give you.
You get 2 scores on that.
So I look at I look at the raw spore equivalents for the 26 species, and then I look at the Hertzsprung score, and that gives me enough to know whether or not we need to dig deeper, because it's the best test, in my opinion, to tell you if there's a problem in the home. Worst test at telling you where to start looking. It's like, it's somewhere.
Which again, like, but it's still though, like, hey, it's worth bringing somebody in that's qualified now. Right. And that's it. It's like, hey, because again, the 26 species, like, they're divided up too in terms of like water loving and non-water loving.
Well, there's 36 species total. 10 are normal ecology, and then 26 are water damaged molds. But I can tell you from looking at that whether or not you need to hire a professional.
What scores are you looking at, or what kind of numbers are you looking at, like throwing off the red flag?
It depends on species. So out of that 26 species, there's 12 of them that are like the dirty dozen. And then there are 5 of them that are the filthy 5. The filthy 5 are from the Hertzsprung. The dirty dozen are 12 species that you'll find referenced in a lot of different tests, but it's 5 Aspergillus species, Chaetomium and Stachybotrys, which are kind of known as the black mold and the black mold's first cousin. So if I see any Stachybotrys or Chaetomium, I'm like, there's going to be a problem, even if there's a little. I'm much more tolerant for Aspergillus, but if I see certain Aspergillus species at heightened levels, then I'm like, okay, those are, and typically it's the species that are known to be toxigenic, meaning they can produce the mycotoxins, or potentially pathogenic. And so I look at those species. There's only one species of Penicillium called Penicillium brevicompactum that it shows up high quite a bit, but it creates a mycotoxin that's a immune system killer. It's very chemically close to what they give organ recipients. to suppress their
Is
immune
it
system. It's almost chemically identical.
Crazy. So basically suppressing your immune system.
Yep.
Which,
And so we watch out for those though, and if those are elevated, I'm like, we need to find out where those are at. But then I kind of also look at the total overall, and you get kind of a feel for it. I've got a calculator on the nonprofit, healthyhome.help, that if you plug the numbers in into the calculator, it'll calculate the Hertzby score if the lab didn't give it to you.
Okay.
And it'll give you a couple of different ways of looking at the data. So it gives you some orange, yellow, and red, but it gives it from 3 different perspectives. So that if you see 3 reds, you know, hey, all 3 of these perspectives thought that was bad. But if you see a red and then 2 greens, then you kind of be like, okay, well, let's look at this a little bit more and why that mold may be there at that count. After the ERMI, though, I tell people to, if it comes back positive, we need to find the mold. The first thing you should always do it's a thing I advise everyone to do, learn to do an okay visual assessment of your home. Keep an eye on your home. But there are ways we look at things for mold that are different than you would normally look at them.
Okay.
I lay a flashlight down on surfaces.
Okay.
If we were looking for spots of dust on your floor here or even on your desktop, if we shine the light straight down, that reflection washes out shadows.
Okay.
If I lay the flashlight down, every little speck casts a shadow and it's 3-dimensionally amplified visually. So you'll see mold when you lay the flashlight down. Mainly where I find that is on windowsills. You'll see the windowsill looks perfectly fine, shining the flashlight out. You lay the flashlight down and you'll see the windowsill has a hump where it's absorbed moisture. Same under kitchen sink cabinets or bathroom sink cabinets. You'll see that bottom shelf swell where water has been.
So once you find it, just is that visual enough to be like, hey, there's the mold? Is there any secondary testing to be like, oh, this is the crap that's growing here and this is the stuff that we saw in the ERMI?
Yeah, when you see something like swelling, you're not seeing mold. You know, I always tell people that the risk and why you need to have a potentially hire an indoor environmental professional that knows certain things. One thing is they need to know when they can say, they need to know to say, I don't know.
Okay, and that's okay.
Is it a great question? If we found some mold in this place, you said, Mike, is it safe for me to stay here? I don't know. I can tell you what the data says. I can tell you what it looks like. You're a unique individual. Your level of reactivity is very unique. The way your body, your immune function, adaptive and innate immune system reactions are going to be totally different than anyone else's because it's like fingerprints. These are all very unique systems. So 99 people could be fine here. You could be the one. So we got to be careful answering questions. So I tell people all the time that when you see something, it doesn't mean it's mold unless you've got proof it's mold. So a lot of times mold assessors will come in and they'll shine a light at something and say, oh, that's mold. And I'm like, okay, it looks like mold. Potentially, are there ways we can narrow it down and make sure before we go ripping out cabinets?
What about, so again, a lot of times, again, I try to like walk patients through this. Like we find mold and mycotoxin issues within them, right?
Clinically,
it's clinically like sinus swab. They got Marcons. They got other things. Like, and the story's starting to build. Like, hey, you have all the symptoms. For me, we want to know, like, hey, where is it? Is it, you know? Because again, if you're living in it, is it colonizing in you? Because again, that's also somewhere we're remediating, just like the home environment. So we're kind of walking through, because to me, I'm like, I don't want to go through and deal with your sinus and your gut and where it's kind of colonized if you're going to go sit back in the home that's going to recolonize you. So this is one of the most important pieces, like identifying what you do and doing that well. But when we talk about, like, every now and then I'm like, hey, I'm going to send you a guide, read through, I'm going to send you a contact, send them your contact, and here's a guide, right? And they'll they go in panic mode, like, I just spent $1,500 for somebody to come over and do an air canister collection. And I'm like, okay. And they said it was normal. I'm like, okay.
And here's the problem. There's reasons for that.
So that's what I want to get into. Like, what are the shortcomings of that? The kind of what's the traditional test?
Now here's what I thought the caveat. I'm a rebel. In the industry, I'm on a national leadership team of I'm on a national IEP committee of a medical organization. And everybody on that team knows, well, Mike's the one that's kind of on the edge because I've worked with sensitized individuals long enough. I tell people I don't work with what I would consider the normal population. And like, well, who do you work with? I work with the exceptional population. They're exceptionally sensitized to mold. They can react to exceptionally small doses, and their reactions can be exceptionally harsh.
Yep.
So I have to be an exceptionally good investigator. So I am very aggressive when I test, because if your home passes my test, you don't have a problem. You're not going to react. Case in point, a mold assessor will walk in and set a pump in the middle of a room on a tripod about 3.5 feet off the ground, set it for 5 minutes, hit start, and then walk around looking for mold, shining the light downwards in many cases, which I said is it just washes it out. You're not going to find it that way. And then they send the pump off to the lab, the sample, and they come back and say, there's nothing wrong with that room. When I go in that room, I find mold.
Yep.
And here's the difference. You may have more trouble believing this than I do, just because of your what you've been exposed to in life. But I believe in gravity.
Yep.
I believe you're having more.
I believe in gravity. I know, like, and this is where I've heard, I'm not sure if it was you or somebody else speak on it, but like, things fall, right? And so like you're 3.5 feet off the ground.
Yeah. So spores have mass, right?
Yep.
And everything with mass it's gravity, it's weight. Sedimentation is a real thing, and especially I have a new relativity theory of gravity we can get into, which I think gravity actually gets stronger by a certain percentage leap every year over 50. And that's why I know I'm not gaining weight. Gravity is just harder on me. But in reality,
I'm going with that. I'm gonna use
these particles are falling, and the larger ones are falling faster. Now the larger particle spores, or the larger spores, are things like Chitomium and Stachybotrys. They're the ones that are like, ooh, those are those we really don't want. So they're all on the ground, and that pump is 3.5 feet off the ground. Now what they'll tell you is, we're testing for the average. The average person's respiration height is about 3.5 feet. And we didn't do anything to stir up the room, because that's obviously how you live in the room, because that's how it was when I got here. All the spores are on the ground underneath their pump. They missed them. What I will do is, if we suspect there's an area because a dog indicated over on this wall, I go bang on the wall. First thing I want to do is wake the mold up. It's not really sleeping, but it's just living its life happy.
Agitate.
I want to agitate it so it sporulates.
Yep.
Then if there's an outlet, I'll put a tube over the outlet and put a piece of tape over that, and I will suck. Well, first I have a little portable vacuum. I suck a little air out of it, because after I stir up those spores, I want to pull them to the outlet, and then put a tube there, tape over the tube, and then suck my sample out from under that tape, so it's forcing air from within the outlet. So, and I get huge hits. Under cabinets, I'll bang on the cabinet. I will bang on the side of the cabinet. And I always tell my clients, I'm like, you're going to hear some banging in here. It's just because I get frustrated. And they laugh. Laughter, if you can get a mold assessor that's not so stoic, they go in there and like, oh, I'm checking for mold because it can be really serious. These people are already stressed. You don't have to tell them. If you can make them laugh, though, you exercise that vagus nerve. They release serotonin and dopamine. It offsets the stress reaction. It makes the whole assessment better. But you want an assessor that, if you're sensitized, get an assessor that tests aggressively, because if they test for the average, 50% is going to be off on this end, 50% is off on this end. If I'm testing aggressively, I may only have 2% that I miss on this end and 98 that I'll find. So testing aggressively is really important.
Yeah, and I think that's the part where, for me, like, I feel bad, because like it isn't necessarily cheap to begin with, and then you're like, hey, I'm sorry, like, you have to go find a better test.
I tell people all the time, I tell them, don't hire me. You've been told you have to. Don't. You've been told things that, and this is where I get back to, find an assessor that will say, we don't know, let's find out. So, because I hear people go to Facebook groups, they call me up bawling. I have to throw away my mattress. I have to throw away all of my clothing. I have to throw away all my upholstered furniture. I'm like, who told you that? They're like, the Facebook. I'm like, I also read the earth is flat. I'm not leaving my house ever.
But and that's it. Like, online's a very scary place. Right?
It is.
There always has to be context, and that's like context. Well, and again, like, because we'll have patients like, do I need to get rid of anything? I'm like, no. Like, let's be logical. One, how bad was the problem? Like,
right, correct.
That to me is the first. Like, is it so bad that we maybe have reason to believe that things are just infested with mold and mold spores, and ultimately their toxins? Again, and then two, what room was it in? Is it a systemic issue, or is it an isolated issue? Was it just this bedroom? Was it your living room? Was it under the sink? right? And you kind of start walking them through. But again, you'd be surprised, like, oh, I bought a new mattress, and I'm just like, how many thousands did you spend that were not necessary?
Well, and the problem with it is, I ask them, I say, who did you hear it from? Oh, I heard it from this Facebook group. I'm like, how well did they look at your clinicals and how well do they understand clinicals? Because you are a unique individual. 95% of people may have to throw away a mattress.
Yep.
What if you're one of the 5 that doesn't? And I tell them, your practitioner is your best source of information, and then there's questions to ask, like you said, how bad is that environment?
Yep.
How much mold was there?
Yep.
Mattresses actually, people usually don't leave a mattress bare.
No, there's usually
They put there's covers, there's sheets, there's fitted sheets, and all these components of dust of mold act like dust particles. They settle, and so I would say for the vast majority of my clients, I save the mattress. Now I do tell them, if sometimes people are telling you what the best case or what the most perfect solution is,
Yes.
but the most perfect solution is the most expensive.
Well, and then what's on that new mattress you're going to buy? Some flame retardant, some other crap potentially you're going to...
And what factory was it in overseas before it shipped on a boat? And
Well, it's,
did it get moldy coming over?
well, I've started taking pictures when you're like, oh, here's brand new studs at Home Depot, or actually it was Lowe's. They're just like laced with like black mold. I'm like, that's gonna go in a new house, and they're gonna be like, no, my house can't have mold because boom, it's new.
Yeah.
Or it's I remember the one time I live up just kind of northeast of Dallas, and got off like the tollway and driving. I'm like, Home Depot truck with drywall, and all of a sudden it starts to rain. I'm like,
there you go.
like, well, shit, that person somebody's gonna buy that, and they're gonna be like, oh, this is like a brand new, fresh, clean slate. I'm like, yet you're potentially having some water activate some dormant mold spores, and it's just gonna go in a dark home.
So, and when we do mold tests, what are we comparing? What do we compare it to? Do you know?
No.
If I take an air test, what am I comparing it to see if it's bad? Outdoor air, right? I take an outdoor sample.
Right.
So outdoor fresh air. Well, just to drop some numbers, when I take an outdoor sample here in Texas, there's anywhere from 2 to 10,000 spores in outdoor air, clean, fresh outdoor air. So now let's take that and apply some research that's been done, primary peer reviewed, that it unequivocally demonstrated that for every spore that the colony has created, there's 350 to 500 particles that are 0.3 micron sized for every spore. So now you do that math, and that means there's hundreds of thousands of fragments in every cubic meter outside. If you do the math and divide by the average tidal value of an adult breath, which is about half a liter, you wind up with a number that's like around 1,500 to 2,000 pieces of mold that we breathe in every breath outdoors, fresh air. So people who are like, oh, I've got to live in a mold-free home. No, you're not going to. No. You're not going to live in a level 3 clean room in Silicon Valley where they're making computer wafers, because they spend billions of dollars to keep that room mold-free. Every place else has mold, and your body, when it's healthy, can deal with it.
Right.
You just got to get it in balance. You got to get it tuned the way it was made to be.
Yeah, do you notice, like, are there states that tend to be worse in terms of environmental mold? Like, which ones are like Florida, Texas, especially? Like, obviously, I'd assume down by the coast, but are there states that tend to be better from a mold spore content? There
are, actually, it's funny because I just did this data pool like a week ago for an outfit. They were asking, what are the top 10 states for mold? And Texas didn't make the list.
Oh, really?
But a lot of the states you would imagine, Tennessee, Georgia, Mississippi, all these southern, south central states. I think just because Texas is so large and we creep up north where, I mean, here in Dallas, we're quite a bit different than Houston. Houston is muggy.
Well, hurricane and all the flooding, you go back to that. And then the other piece, we talked about, is it more common and recognized, or are there things changing and we getting less tolerant or less kind of resilient to the environment? So, again, do you see building changes within material? Like, hey, the wood shiplap versus the drywall, like stuff like that. Do you see changes in that being impactful? Unfortunately, I think it's always going to follow the money. Okay.
That, you know, I mean, I wish we could live in a world where we say, hey, we found out drywall grows mold and there are better materials we can build houses out of. But when it comes down to it, if the drywall is the cheapest and the builders make the most money from that and the buyers save the most money and can get a bigger house for less money, it's going to go the way of the economic forces.
But going back, let's say, hey, 40 years ago or in the 1940s, like that wall instead of drywall was wood shiplap.
Yeah,
like would that, to you, be like, oh yeah, that might actually be a better, less facilitative environment for mold versus the
you know, I think that it's offset because a 40-year-old home is going to breathe more.
Yep.
But a 40-year-old home has got 40 years in which it needs to have been kept up pretty well. So that age factor comes in and kind of maybe offsets any advantage you get. You can actually, build homes today that are new homes that are fairly mold resistant. I mean, if you get the right materials, get the right supplies. There's a couple books out. One by a guy named Doug Hoffman he's president of an organization called NORMI.
Okay.
Which is a national organization of remediators and inspectors. And he's got a book on building a mold-free home. And then there's another guy that is an absolute amazing indoor environmental professional. And I'm honored to consider, for him to be an associate. I'm gonna draw a blank now on his name. I can picture him in my head.
I can't help you there, but we can come back to it.
I'll get back with you on that.
When you ran into
there I was talking him up, and then I'm like,
ooh. Randomly bolt out his name. We'll know why it just jumps out.
But he has a book called Building a Home Mold-Free or Mold-Free Home. If you search on mold-free home building, those two books are really the ones that show up.
Interesting. Again, we talk about, hey, maintaining a home. What are things people should be doing to maintain a home to minimize the mold risk?
Oh, great question, because the whole ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. When it comes to mold, that's especially the case because it's not that hard to monitor. Monitoring is number one, but people don't monitor their air quality of their home, and there's inexpensive air quality monitors. Knowing what your average particle count is in your home, particles really impact our respiratory health and a lot of other things. Allergens are particles that'll be measured. Measuring the gases in our air will let us know when things are going awry. CO2 saturation is a good proxy for oxygen content in the air, and especially if you live in a multi-family housing. I told a little joke about, I'm wealthy because I've got 2 bedrooms and I only need one. I actually do live in that apartment. and one thing I have to watch out for that I monitor is my CO2 levels. 800 is considered upper end healthy. I measurements in there 24, 2500, not in mine, but in other multifamily housing because there's not exterior facing walls. They're built up against other units. And people are literally suffocating.
So crazy.
One of them, there was a functional doctor that called me and said, Mike, I've got mold in my place. I'm having all the symptoms. And she's a functional, she knows mold exposure. I went and took a reading, and her reading was 3,800 CO2 saturation. I'm like, how are your kids doing
at school? What should it be?
800 or below. Jesus. Outdoors, it's typically 430.
Good Lord.
Yeah, so all the oxygen was just out of their place. Super nice, high-end building, built tight as a drum. We're in there breathing, converting, using up all the oxygen.
Yeah. How's your headaches? How's your brain fog?
Exactly.
Your metabolism? Everything.
And I asked her. I said, "What's your symptomology, doc?" She's like, "Just the fatigue is back." And I'm like, and then she realized it's when she gets home, she would hit a wall like at 6 o'clock and be like, "I've got to go lay down. I'm just exhausted."
Crazy.
It's like you're not breathing.
So I had one of my questions, does bleach really kill mold, or is it a dangerous misconception?
Bleach will kill some mold, but anything that is going to kill something, it's all about contact and dwell time. That's the whole. It kind of goes into like a dosage equations where dosages. What are you being exposed to? You've got to come in direct contact with it. How much and for how long and over what period of time? If bleach can't get in touch with all the mold, it's not going to kill it. And mold grows 3-dimensionally down in colonies. You have layers that grow on top of layers, and the research shows when it comes to a porous substrate, which is what mold grows on, bleach does not penetrate well enough to kill it.
Like say a fibrous piece of wood or a porous piece of wood. Yeah.
But what mold does do is it removes color really well. So I always tell people using bleach is a pretty smart idea because it's like giving mold, which is the enemy, camouflage.
Yep.
So you think it's gone, but it's actually just building its army because it's now it's now transparent or white.
You bleached it.
You bleached it, and it gives you a false sense of security, so you quit paying attention to it.
It's so crazy.
You've actually just worked for the enemy as an enemy agent because you've given it camouflage and you've given everybody in the house reason to say, we're not going to look there anymore because we can't smell it because the bleach has masked the smell and you can't see it.
Well, and you killed maybe, let's say, 20% of the colony, stressed out some, toxins probably dumped.
Yep, toxin production.
And the problem's still right there, and it's going to come back, and you're going to be, hey, like it doesn't look like it because you dyed it.
And bleach isn't real good for people either.
No.
So there are much friendlier things to use than bleach if you are going to spray something.
So is there anything even worthwhile trying to spray to be kind of self-supporting in terms of this?
So here's where
Your enzyme.
Here's where the little voices come up. Mike, no, don't say that. But Mike, it's the obvious truth. Okay, as a professional, I always look at a situation as to where did the moisture come from? Where do I think the mold is growing? And keep in mind, I work with people who are in situations where they don't have near as much discretionary income, and I do that purposefully. So my nonprofit's all about helping people who hadn't got a buck to get rid of the mold. If you have some surface mold on a surface and you know the moisture came from outside that surface, so you are seeing the iceberg, and it's just super light, I don't have any qualms against somebody doing their best to clean that as best they can if their alternative is doing nothing.
Yep.
There's a product called Concrobium Mold Control. It's a ready-to-use spray at Home Depot. It's cheap. It is organic-based salts.
Okay.
So it's registered as a fungicide and a fungistat. Fungistat meaning it inhibits regrowth.
Okay.
So if you call me and said, Mike, I've got a little mold on this wall in a shower or in a bathroom, it's on the ceiling, it's from the steam that rose up. We want to make sure it's not from water from the other side because you could be seeing the tip of the iceberg. But if you know you're seeing the entirety, then do what makes sense. Don't miss a house payment or stop buying groceries to treat mold that's probably just a minor surface issue. So there are sometimes I do say, yeah, the adage that you've got to rip everything out is true. I would never tell someone, hey, don't take that material out. But I would tell them, if you're going to have to leave that material, it'd be much better to clean it. Yeah. And in some case, and they know what I'm saying. I've got to protect myself liability-wise. Plus, we're going to have people out there that are my peers that know the standard of care, and it's definitely not the standard of care to leave drywall.
No, it's like, and to me again, like, hey, you may be hurting financially, but at some point, I think it's pretty reasonable to like, hey, that drywall needs to be replaced.
It will need to be replaced. But if you sometimes life isn't getting easier.
No, but if it's a short term, hey, here's a way to jump out of the boiling pot of water while we figure out a better long term strategy. I think people can appreciate that and understand the context and how you're saying that. In terms of what do you have any kind of respect? So if we walk into Home Depot or Lowe's or any, not necessarily those two stores, but they have products on their shelves that offer testing. Are they just trash worthy, or are there any benefit to those tests?
There's benefit to any test.
Okay.
And I tell people that you've got to know. So I've worked on advanced degrees, spent I'm 57 and have student loans. That's what I got out of it. Plus the ability to challenge my thinking, because that's really what it taught me to do more than anything. But any test could be good information, even if you know the test is wrong 100%, especially if you know the test isn't wrong 100%. So even a meter that's not calibrated, as long as you know how it reads, is a good meter because you get to do comparative analysis and differential analysis. And that's how it works, is that like these Petri dishes, okay? A lot of people will tell you the store-bought Petri dishes are garbage. No, they're not. They're not finely calibrated. They're not professional grade measurement devices, but if you take one and you put it in a sink cabinet, you take one and put it on the cabinet, and then you take one and put it in each bathroom, and then put it in the dry rooms, the bedrooms, and it just so happens all of them come out looking about the same, except for this cabinet one. It looks like a shrubbery. That's a good indication something's going on.
Yes.
Especially I love to do aggressive, agitated testing. So especially if you bang on the walls of that cabinet a little bit and put the petri dish in there and open and close that door a couple times before you walk away. Now you know you're ticking it off, so it's going to be really elevated. And you could get a false positive, meaning you could be stirring up some dust that gets on there and makes it look worse. So I always say do one where you've agitated it, do another one in the exact same location where you haven't agitated it. So do one on a Monday and then close the petri dish up. Always do the one you haven't agitated first, and then later on a Tuesday, go in there and agitate it, and then same amount of time, and look at them. If they look different, you've got to ask yourself, it's giving me information. What does that information mean? And that's why we have to be able to come up with creative ways to test sometime, because it's all valuable.
Well, I think,
but there's no perfect test, but there's also no.
You have to also, like you said, like here are variables that you can control.
Yep.
So we're testing all these different rooms. This one, though, sounded an alarm.
Yep.
Even though we may not like the sensitivity of the test or the summit, but like that alarm that sounded like it deserves listening.
It does, and I tell people the best testing you can do is multimodality. If you think an area has a problem from one test, try a different way of testing it and see if they agree. Because there's cheap ways you can test.
Yes.
And so try multiple cheap ways and see if they're all coming about the same. And if they are, then that gives you more reason to believe that, there's a problem there.
It's just one of those things where I think people are like, oh, I did this test, or should I do it? Again, I'm like, obviously, if you did it and you only did one, again, I think that's harder to discern information from.
Yep, I have people all the time that call me and say, hey, I did this, so I've got mold. And I'm like, you know what it tells you? It tells you only what it tells you. It tells you at the time that you open that petri dish, 6 mold spores fell on it.
Yep.
Does it mean there are more than 6 in that cabinet? No, it does not. Does it mean that there were only 6 in it? No, there could be thousands. Now, a law of averages would tell you there's probably more in there, but the problem people run into a lot of times is they're convinced a hypothesis is a fact.
Well, it's the same thing. Like, let's say you run a mycotoxin urine test, and somebody's like, you test once, and 6 months later, like, well, I want to retest. Is this better? What are you testing? You're testing their elimination of the toxin. So it's like, you're still moving it out, right? It's not always a bad thing that it's still elevated. It's just you're still remediating your own body and forcing the toxin out. So it's all relative. You have to take the information of like, well, if this is a stool test, like this is a test of what you're excreting and moving out through stool, right? You're going to find stuff. It's again using that information in context of like, if our goal is to do X, Y, and Z, then it's again better to use the data over time. And then also have a realistic expectation. Is like, hey, you've been living in this moldy environment for 20 years. You were really sick by it. You had, so there's probably some logical sense that you've accumulated a decent amount. So to expect it's going to be out in 3 months, you might just see it peaking in 3 months in terms of your clearance, especially if we're doing things to make you more efficient at clearing. So would we expect to see more on excretion?
And that's a challenge that I try to tell people, hey, talk to your clinician about this. But I think what they'll try to do is they'll try to map their clinicals to their environmental tests. And where they'll get into that the most is when they do a clinical and like IgG, IgE, and they'll say, oh, I've got these molds. And then they look at their ERMI and it's not the same molds. And they're like, we didn't find it. I'm like, we may have. No, we didn't. People have to understand that mold colonies are dynamic. They're not static. It's not one mold comes in, takes over, and that's the only mold that ever lives there. It's like a little microscopic geopolitical, invasion after invasion. So you may have a very fast-moving mold that finds the water first, that takes over, and then a very slow germinating, slow-moving, but very tough mold comes in and kicks that one out and moves in. So by the time you find it, you may have gone through 3 or 4 iterations of what that colony looks like ecologically. And then the other thing is they'll try to say, hey, we did the remediation, but it didn't work. And I'll say, how do you know it didn't work? Well, my clinicals are going up. It's like, talk to your doctor about that, because it's not a one-to-one instant thing.
No.
And what they could be doing is, we were talking about it earlier, because I love talking about limbic system dysregulation and belief versus reality, and how I tell people that if you want to get over mold exposure the quickest, do your best to look at everything optimistically positive, with a sense of a positive outcome, and look forward to it being gone, not reasons why it's not.
Yep.
But then also it's hard because you also tell them, now, and pay attention to your body.
Yep.
But because it's hard to separate those two, how do I feel versus how I think.
In whenever, from a chronic health standpoint, like that conversation is probably one of the most important, but also one of the most difficult.
Yeah.
Because like, hey, let's listen to your body, but let's not over amplify the voice you give pain. Yeah. I think because if you over amplify the voice you give pain, you just subconsciously wire your brain to be better at detecting pain. So are you falsely amplifying something that might actually be getting better? Yeah,
there's, I told you I'd worked on a PhD in psychology, got certified as a hypnotist. I was certified in trauma and pain suppression as two hypnotic disciplines. And when we were going through the pain suppression, which they do tooth extraction and they can do full surgery with no anesthesia.
It's crazy.
It's absolutely. I've seen some insane things because I'm very pragmatic and very data driven. So it's very counter to my nature. But they would always say that pain is only 1/3 what we think it is, or what we think it is. Number one is because of amplification, because we're focusing on it, and two is because of societal. Is to warn others, don't come over here, or to warn others to call them out, to have them come help you. But evolutionarily, we were taught to amplify pain, to announce it, but also to focus on it, maybe to keep from injuring it more and whatnot. But the actual nerve stimulation is about 1/3 of what we really feel, and that's how we go through that talk off when we're hypnotizing people not to feel things. It's convincers to get them to where they know they can control at least 2/3 of it.
Well, and that's it. Is like, even as an exercise, like, so you can do the different things like DNRS and other limbic system retrainings. I honestly, I'll be like, wake up and write down what you want to feel, what you want to focus on, because you have to water that more than what you don't want to feel. You have to focus on, and not to say water, especially with mold, but you need to marinate and emphasize where you want to go versus, where you're stuck.
Yeah.
But a lot of times when people have chronic illness, it's such an easy reflex for them to go to their pain and where they're stuck,
what they're accustomed to.
And so it's like, the more you look for a tiger, you're going to start seeing tigers everywhere, even though it might be teddy bears all around you.
Well, let me ask this, because I've been curious about this, and it just came up. I had this crazy idea once. It was a veterinarian. She could not live in the house. Her husband could not come near her if he came from the house. He would go to Walmart, buy a jogging suit, go to a truck stop, shower, change, bag everything up, leave it in the car, then he could come see her. And I started talking to her about limbic system dysregulation, about how that's the emotional part of the brain, how perpetual fight or flight, how all this. And I says, listen, I'm not a clinician. I'm not diagnosing anything. I'm just telling you conditions I know that can make your condition worse, and asking you, what do you think? Because you need to mention this to your doctor. And I said, I says, I want to try something, and I've never tried this before. We did a quasi little double-blind study. I told her husband, I says, let's see if it could be limbic system, just on a hunch. I said, you react from anything from your house? She goes, yes, 100%. Yes, no doubt in your mind. 0 doubt, 0 failure rate, 0 error rate. Yeah. I'm like, okay, your husband's going to go to Walmart. He's going to pick up 4 to 6 jogging suits. He's going to separate them. He's going to take however many articles he wants in the house and rub them all over the grossest places, throw them in the washer, wash them, bag them independently, and then he's going to take the remaining. They've never gone there. He's going to take them to a laundromat. He's going to wash them with the same laundry detergent, new boxes. And he's going to do that after he's done his ritual of showering and changing into a suit. So all of these are pristine. They've never been in there. Then he labels them, mixes them up, hands them to a third party, and then brings them to you. And she said, that's a really unique idea. She goes, I said, and then you expose yourself one at a time. He took 4 of them into the house. She triggered on 4. They were the wrong 4. And when she realized that, she started working on break those neurosynaptic connections.
You created plastic pathways. Like neuroplasticity is a very real thing.
Yeah.
And it can work in your favor, and it can work against you and be a negative.
Yeah.
Right. It's just
because a lot of people, when I start talking about it, they're like, okay, so it's in my head. I'm like, sort of, yes, but no, not in the context you're thinking, because it's programming. It's the computer versus the programming, or psychology versus neurology. And the example I like to use is if you're on a hike on a beautiful day with your family and you're having a great time and you step over a log and you step on a snake, you're going to run and scream and, oh my gosh, but then your family's doubled over laughing because they knew you were going on that hike, and the day before they put a rubber stake down and they hold it up. Instantly your body's physiology changes, but none of it you stop to think about. It's all instantaneously wired responses. And so that's how she kind of got that really could be happening to her, even though...
Boy, it happens and it's quick, right? That system has to be quick because evolutionary-wise, it's for us to react to perceived threat, whether it's hot fire withdrawal or something dangerous jumping out of the bush, sprint. And again, whether it's PTSD, your brain sees something so scary once, and your brain's first goal is to keep you alive. It's secondary. Once your brain knows it's safe, then you can have social constructs and learn and reproduce and get all kind of the good part we enjoy about life. But the first goal is our brains to keep us alive. That is literally the first reflexive system we're born in. It's way more efficient when we're born in it. There's something that we have to develop the frontal lobes to suppress it. But anytime you have exposure to a threat, your brain's like, ooh, I know what that looks like now. So anything that mimic or look like the bear that jumped out at you, it might be a squirrel that jumped at you. But if it maybe looks like the bear, your brain might still have the whole same physiological biochemical response from a reflex, which means it happens instantaneously. And that is the hardest part when you come, whether it's PTSD from war or trauma or even chronic health, I think is one of the hardest things to unravel because it happens. A lot of people felt crappy for so long, and they have this developed from trying to stay away from the things that make them feel like trash. And they have to have this, at one point it's adaptive, but then I think it becomes maladaptive because they overreact. Yet the cascade they shift is now stress hormone goes up, adrenaline goes up. That only cascades down to make detox worse, immune system more suppressed, and it's this dual-edged sword. So it's like you said, we have to remediate the home or check on the home, check on the person, but then also a lot of times you have to work on rewiring the limbic system.
Wow.
Well, I got kind of two last questions for you. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, absolutely.
How can people connect and find trustworthy information? So we talked already, you'd said about your nonprofit. And again, it was healthyhome.help.
HELP.
And then you also put, you mentioned another one, indoor environmental safe space. And I know I had a patient out in Florida that we were working with, and I reached out to you, and you mentioned a website. Here's a place where you can go and look for people who are well qualified to come in and be invited into your home to help you solve the environmental.
That's ISEAI.org. ICI.
Okay.
And that's another nonprofit organization. That's the one that I told you is akin to Shoemaker's Group.
Okay. Yep.
But really helpful organization. So they've got forums and whatnot that are a little bit, they're practitioners, and because a lot of the information people get off of some of the forums and whatnot, you find out it's collections of people who've been through the war. But it's not practitioners who treated and studied the cause of the problem and how to remedy it. So again, it's a lot of people running around with scalpels that have had heart attacks.
That's it. I'll every now and then I'll comment and I'll say something on this post on a Facebook forum, and I don't it's literally, it could be a 7-hour conversation. And if somebody's talking about, I think it's just hormone replacement, and again but there is on a carnivore diet page. I'm oh, hey, you're having a bunch of iron. Maybe your hormones are getting suppressed because you're having a bunch of iron overload and ferritin. You're creating a secondary hemochromatosis, and that literally will crush your testosterone levels and your ability to make it. So I just simply said hey, have you checked ferritin levels? And all of a sudden, somebody's well, mine's high. And then another person's mine's high. I'm oh, shoot. I'm what does that mean? It's okay. And again, which I'm happy to jump in. And it's just one of those things it can be a very good place and supportive place, but it also can create more tigers to jump out at the patient that may not really be threats to them.
Sure.
And there needs to be context. And I think that's where when you have a good provider and a good team, there's always going to be hey, yes, that can be the case, but here's why we know it's not. Here's the context. Here's the other surrounding parts to your story where we can maybe exclude you don't have that because here's why, because this is what happens when you have that.
And I bet John Banta would agree with you 100%. He's the guy that wrote the book on how to build a mold-free home.
Awesome. John Banta, there we go.
John Banta.
Awesome. Well, let's wrap this up. I'm, years, the decade and a half at least in this space, what's the craziest mold story you've had working from remediation to the inspection to finding, like, what's the craziest, scariest story you've got?
And I'd say this gets into, well, oh boy, there's been a couple of them, and I hate to, I've had people I've had clients who could see mold filaments growing out of their fingertips, and they would conjure them, basically. They'd be like, here, I'll show you, and they would start to move and say, can you see them? And I almost felt like, oh no, I don't want to hurt his feelings by saying no, and I don't think you need a mold assessor at this point.
Yeah.
I think it's and the funny thing is, I can't tell you, do I think there were some psychological issues going on there? Absolutely. I mean, people are not going to see filaments growing out of their fingers. However, could I say, oh, that's not mold? It could be. Microcyclic trichothecenes are some of the most vicious neurotoxins in the world. And if he was being exposed to a great deal of Stachybotrys, it can drive you literally insane. It's been studied by DARPA, the Defense Agency Research. So that was one of them, though. He was having me look at between cracks in the woods. He says, you have to be quick because it'll pull out back down in there. It's like little worms. And I'm like, mold's too small to be a worm. And they kind of knew that he had really driven himself a little unstable, though, being so emphatic about searching for the mold. And I think he just became obsessed. And then I think the toxins that may have really been there just exacerbated his problem. Things like that. But I think also on the flip side, I mean, and I've been in some of the toughest of tough situations because I deal almost exclusively with medical referrals. So I've been to people's houses who, one lady had respiratory issues that eventually led to cardiac arrest, and she coded twice, and the doctors all said, we have nothing to attribute this to. She was a young, in her 20s. They said there's no underlying issue or comorbidity. The only thing we can really tie this to is the mold exposure. But their house was flooded and sat for several weeks flooded, and there was mold up every wall 2 to 3 feet and carpeted. It's one of the worst homes I've seen. So sometimes I hate telling the horror stories because I don't want to scare people. I'm not a sensationalist, but there are some simple things you can do, though, and these are up on the website too, on the nonprofit. There's one called Managing Moisture and Humidity. Things like, I talked about monitoring your environment, monitoring your humidity. Put water bugs, I used to call them water bugs, little water alarms. They're inexpensive, under all your sinks and behind all your water appliances. You can get fancy ones that communicate or wired, but the little cheap ones, they scream at like hundreds of decibels. You'll know something's going on somewhere, and that can save you a whole mold remediation right there. Yeah. Simple things like that. Manage your water, and if you know you have a water problem, fix it quickly.
100%.
So.
Well, I really appreciate your time, and I hope if you guys have any more questions, like, definitely turn into Lean On, his nonprofit. At the bottom of the video, we'll make sure we list it in the show notes, so you can have the direct link. Huge wealth of information, and I'm excited to go check out the nonprofit. Since we last talked, I wasn't aware that you had this as a nonprofit.
It wasn't even there yet.
You'd mentioned that you're wanting to start building it, which I'm very, very glad you did, because I think I've even teased it to patients that you're working on something, kind of stepping away from being more hands-on and more supportive in like a mentoring way to help people out who maybe can't afford it, because I think it is a very financially scary topic. And I'm from a financial side, like, look, we want to get you healthy and we want to get you well, and we want to do it as cost efficiently as possible. It's like, how much can we do on our own, and how much do we need to kind of figure things out? So this is a very good resource. I really appreciate you creating this. So, anyways, appreciate having you on.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Absolutely.
So I hope you guys enjoyed us. Until next time, we look forward to having you.